So recently, the YouTuber Hazardous released a game called Apex Rush on Steam. And the concept of the game is honestly really interesting because it feels like a mix between Trackmania and GTA 5, which isn't something you see very often. I genuinely like the idea behind this game, and I think the amount of content available at launch is pretty impressive. But with that being said, there are quite a few things that, in my opinion, either need improvement or a complete rework. And that's exactly what I'll be talking about today. Before we get into it, I want to give a quick disclaimer. I haven't played the drift mode or messed around with the track builder at all. I've only really played the official racing maps, so everything in this video is based on that experience. So let's start with the car handling. You have three cars in the game, which are the NSX, the Hyundai, and the BMW. The NSX, which is used for slower and more technical tracks, is, in my opinion, pretty balanced. It doesn't suffer from anything like extreme understeer and feels pretty predictable under braking and cornering. The Hyundai, which is featured on high-speed tracks, unfortunately has a very noticeable understeer problem. On top of that, many of the tracks it's used in have very tight corners, which really don't suit the way this car handles well. And then last but not least, we have the BMW, which is the hybrid car with the jumping mechanic. This one is actually pretty fun to drive, I can't lie. It combines different traits from the other two cars and has pretty good low speed handling, however it still struggles in the high speed corners, just like the Hyundai. The jumping mechanic itself feels pretty predictable and satisfying when executed correctly, and I think it's a genuinely good addition to the game. The thing is, the cars themselves aren't really the issue, because there's a good variety of them and each one has its own gimmick. But the real problem is the way the car handling system works. So the first issue I want to talk about is the way the cars steer, because in my opinion it's way too sensitive. The tuning is done way too aggressively here, and all it takes is a minor input and the car feels like it's steering at full force. This issue is present in all cars, and I just wish we either got a sensitivity slider or this was just toned down a bit. With the developer also recommending controller, you're really just taking away the one advantage the controller has over a keyboard, which is gradual input. This problem does get worse because of something else, and that is steering input delay. If you hold left or right for more than about half a second, the car smooths out of the turn. The issue is that when you release the stick, the car doesn't stop steering immediately, but there's a roughly 0.2 second delay before it straightens out. This, combined with the lack of smooth steering, makes cars feel very unpredictable, honestly. It's very difficult to push them close to the walls because you're never entirely sure how the car will react, and that just leads to unnecessary crashes. Now I want to move away from car handling and talk about some of the other issues. I want to start off by saying I completely agree with Hazardous that just because the game is built in Unreal Engine 5 doesn't mean it needs heavy graphics features like Lumen or Nanite. This is good because it makes sure the game is accessible for everyone. However, why does the game feel like it's running at 720p? I'm playing the game at max settings in 1440p, but everything looks extremely pixelated without anti-aliasing, more than it should at this resolution, and when I turn anti-aliasing on, it just looks smeary and low quality. And keep in mind, I'm playing this game on a 5070, which is not a slow GPU by any means. And this leads me beautifully into yet another point, which is the sight readability of the tracks. Now, there are barriers to stop you from falling off of the track, which is good, but the main issue is the lack of texturing. Take a look at this picture. Now this looks like a completely flat road all the way to the loop. However, if I start playing the video, you can see that there is actually a jump here, which is just completely invisible when you're driving up to it. One possible solution for this would be to add a subtle outline around track blocks. Nothing too distracting, but just to give enough visual cues of where surfaces begin and end. This next issue I want to talk about is still about controls, but it's slightly less important than the steering problems. Air control mapping feels very unintuitive in this game. You have joystick forwards and backwards, which is pitch. You have roll, which is joystick left and right, and yaw requires you to hold the handbrake while steering. I completely understand why this is the way it is. Hazardous has been a GTA 5 content creator for over a decade, and this is how cars in GTA behave. But as someone with nearly 2,000 hours in Rocket League, you can imagine this feels very unnatural. I feel like a simple toggle in the settings to swap roll and yaw axes would make a massive difference. And on top of that, air control feels too slow. I'm not saying they should be as snappy as in Rocket League, but they definitely need to be more responsive than they are now. On certain tracks, like this one, there isn't enough time to roll upright before landing, which just causes weird sideways landings and slowdowns. And I also forgot to mention, you can't pitch the car when holding handbrake to yaw, which is just limiting your controls even further. Now let's quickly go over some smaller issues and some features that I'd love to see added in the future. So you have 3 different camera settings, one chase cam, one hood cam, and one front bumper cam, but I think certain track sections should automatically switch camera angles similar to Trackmania. For example, switching to hood cam during loops. A few other things I would also love to see would be multiplayer, personal best and medal ghosts, just like in Trackmania, and leaderboard replays.